by Councilmember Blumenfield and Councilmember Harris Dawson. We will call this meeting to order, and first on our list is the general public comment. That is an item for which people would, the first person is Allison Schallert, then Marilyn Wells and Jerry Jones. Allison, Marilyn, and Jerry. Okay, welcome.
My name is Allison Schellert. I'm from Hancock Park area, and I'm here just to speak up, be a voice for our support for the PSH ordinance. Please pass it so we can solve our homeless crisis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Wells, also from Hancock Park area, and we are speaking for the homeless advocates that are formerly homeless, that do beautifully in supportive housing. We need supportive housing, and I really hope that you vote for it and continue the support. We want to have support for supportive housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Jones, Barbara Hensley, Tony Al, Ellie Farmer.
Good afternoon, Barbara Hensley. I represent almost 4,000 members of the Sierra Club that live in the Central Group. And I was here to talk today about the historical designation of Liberty Park, but I didn't see it on the agenda, so I'm not sure how to proceed.
Okay. So you're here to speak on what issue?
On the Liberty Park historical designation.
Okay. That is item number
I'm sorry.
8, correct?
Yeah, it didn't come up on the screen, or at least I didn't see it as something I could choose. So I'll withhold my comments until
Sure.
then.
And if you could speak to the clerk representative, or someone needs to clear that up. Who from the city clerk's office can help with this, or who can help with this?
Council member, right now we are working, there's people, we're having technical issues with the kiosk. So right now they are working on it as we speak, so that way we can get it to work.
Okay, so what should the public do then?
At the moment, would you prefer that they put their names in general public comment, or do you want to just wait maybe about 5 minutes so that way we could open up the other items?
So are you asking then that for people who want to sign up on other items to speak, that we just postpone the meeting for 5 minutes, or go into recess for 5 minutes for the...
Yes, actually that would hopefully work.
Okay. Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. What we will do is then recess this meeting for 5 minutes while they fix the technical difficulties with our system. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, we'll recess for 5 minutes. Thank you. Board's not working. Board's not working.
I think it takes like 10 seconds.
Hey, well, thank you.
Perfect. You got it. Thanks for coming down. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. You're welcome. Oh, yeah. No, Hello, hello. I just would like to make an announcement that we are no longer using the kiosk system, and we're using physical cards. So any comments that were put on the kiosk system, we're not going to use that system. We're only going to use the physical card. So please make sure, if you do want to speak, fill out a card on the item or the general public comment that you'd like to speak on. Thank you.
So when are we going to get them? Okay, we're back to the old system of cards, and we will call this meeting back to order. We will start off with the multiple agenda item cards, and this is an item for which people wishing to speak on more than one item. Laureen Scheinder, Alex Vizatsky.
And Mr. Chair, would you like 2 minutes on the clock?
Yes, please, 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, council members. Alex Visatsky. I'm here on behalf of the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. Want to speak on items 5 and 6 and speak in strong support of the PSH ordinance and the interim motel conversion ordinance. We urge the council members to preserve the parking reductions as they are in the ordinance, as well as the incentives and higher thresholds for site plan review. These are the changes that will ultimately ensure that more of our HHH funding goes to funding supportive housing units and not underutilized parking spaces or lengthy review processes. We want to applaud the council's boldness in introducing the 222 resolution and believe that these ordinances are the policy changes that will actually make sure that we fulfill that resolution. We want to applaud your leadership and also thank the planning department for their leadership in this regard. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Lawrence?
I'm Rabbi Lawrence Shendlin. I am a member of Bend the Ark, and really just here as a citizen. First, also to congratulate and thank you for your leadership in undertaking these ordinances and to advocate for their passage as quickly as possible and without changes. As a rabbi, I speak from a faith tradition that understands that we are to love our neighbor as ourselves. One can say that if we have acted in the past as if they're not our neighbors, then we don't have to love the homeless. Set 3/4 of the people of Los Angeles, let it be known that we do want to provide the housing and support services that these people desperately need, that we do not want to have them, that we pity watching them living under our freeways and in our parks, that we want to see them living a life of dignity such as we live, and we have put our money where our mouth is. We encourage you, recognizing that the devil is in the details and that these ordinances are complex, to accept these ordinances. The details have been worked out very well. Time to move on and let the better angels of our nature dictate that which is right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wayne and Herman?
So again, thank you for breaking the electronic system, you drunk fuck. Now, number one, fuck number one. Number two, the Bureau of Public Works, Private Development Streetscape, fuck that. Then we get to number three, police garages. We don't want police garages. Fuck the police garages. Just open up the parking lots. Let people have their own car and their own RV. In fact, give them 220-volt plug-ins. Yes, and let them live in their own cars, and then they can go outside and use the bathroom. Yes, and then you pick up the shit and pay for it. Number four, fuck number four, mandatory soft story. There is no such thing as soft story. This city's a sad story. Fuck that item. Number five, again, fuck that item. The city attorney doesn't know how to draft a goddamn EIR or EIO or whatever the fuck you call it. We don't care about it. We don't want it. Get out of here, developers. Leave. Go to a city that appreciates you, unlike these blackmailers. And then number 6, fuck number 6. Number 7, Sequel, Hollywood Heritage. Yes, sustain the appeal. They sound like nice people. Unlike you scumbags, they sound like nice people. Number 8, number 10, the 10th district. Fuck that. Herman Jason Wesson, retard racist for the record. Number 9, another project in CD10, ran by the racist Herman Jason Wesson, the racist. Finally, number 5 from Paul Koretz. You fat fucking slob. Fuck you. Thank you.
Herman?
Oh, thank you. Yes. Okay. He's coming, scumbag. Thank you.
So you see on item 8 and 9, dealing with the tyrant Herman Jason Wesson, the president of City Hall. How do we deal with the continued form of such racist cultural heritage commissions when there are no Latinos on the commission because they say we can't read? Well, I'm fucking reading the agenda, Herbie. Then I go into item number 4, dealing with Miss Martinez, who I nicknamed Mommy. And Mommy was very upset today. She sent me down here early because she wanted to make sure that I talked about building and safety in the manner from the former building and safety head guy who was using date rape drugs to seduce his employees. And then there was item number 3 that I signed up on. Sit down, skinhead. I got it under control. Mr. Weezer is the chair. He runs the show.
Yes, Mr. Herman, please stick to the agenda. Thank you.
Got you. So dealing with Los Angeles Police Department, just this morning while I was there fighting for public parking because of my disability, some white nigger motherfucker by the name of Steve Sobroff decided to remove me. Simply because of 42 U.S.C. 1983, I was exercising my First Amendment. And I told that Jew nigger that you shouldn't be killing men and women on a stake. Stick them on a Christmas tree, you motherfucker, and find me some homeless camp poverty.
So, for those of you who have attended this meeting for the first time, we apologize if any of that language has offended you. We have been advised by our city attorney that they have the right to use that language because of the First Amendment. We obviously respect the First Amendment, but at the same time, we request that any speakers who speak that if you want to get your point across, there's a much better way of doing that than those 2 previous examples.
Mr. Chair, the person with the dog who just spoke continues to disrupt the meeting. I could hardly hear what you were saying just now.
Thank you, Mr. Herman. That's your first warning, and the second warning, we're going to ask you to leave the meeting. Herman?
Mr. Chair, he's continuing to yell out, and I would suggest that you ask the sergeants to remove him immediately.
Yes, Mr. Herman, if you could please leave this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And from the folks that are here, again, I know the chair already apologized, but I know he was disrupting your participation as well. So hopefully you're okay with the fact that we removed him from the meeting. One person's okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. John Motter?
Hi, I signed up to speak on 2 agenda items, so which is this, 5 or 6?
5 and 6. This is, if you sign up to speak on 2 items, we incorporate that into something called a multiple agenda. That's now, yes.
Okay, yeah, my name's John Motter. I'm a community organizer with Ground Game LA and the Democratic Socialists of America, Los Angeles. I'm here to speak in support of permanent supportive housing and producing more of it as soon as possible. I just came from a police commission hearing meeting this morning where even the Board of Commissioners kept saying that we need to decriminalize homelessness and that the only solution is more housing. I'm seeing actually in my community an increase in criminalization, and every time I come to these meetings I see like a lot of NIMBYs come out and say we don't want any housing or shelters built in our neighborhood. So as part of this permanent supportive housing plan, I don't want to see like 1 or 2 projects proposed, in different neighborhoods that gives people opportunity to say, no, I don't want, the 5,000 homeless veterans sleeping on the street of LA living next to me. I want to see 60,000 units being proposed all over the county all at once. We need to house all these people immediately. And then I have time for 6. We get 1 minute total.
That was 2 minutes, sir.
2?
Yeah.
The clock's
Thank you. Okay, we go to public comment now. Ellie Farmer, Charlie Cornow, Andrew Cohen.
Afternoon, members of the PUM Committee. I am here today, along with many members of Unite Here Local 11, to urge you to pass the short-term rental ordinance as soon as possible. We have lost over 4,000 housing units in this city due to Airbnb displacement. I've seen it on my own street. I see it in everybody else's neighborhood. I hear my friends and coworkers and colleagues talk about it all the time. Rents are going up. We're not getting enough housing stock in this city. We need to do permanent supportive housing. We need to regulate Airbnb. We have a housing crisis. You all know this, and this is how we're going to solve it. This is one very important piece of that puzzle, and I urge you to pass that legislation as soon as possible. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Charlie Carno, and I'm a researcher for Unite Here Local 11. I'm here to urge the passage of a strong short-term rental ordinance that will also close a loophole around what is called transient occupancy residency structures. This city provision has been used to transform residential housing to short-term rentals. At 888 South Olive Street downtown, there was a 303-unit condo building. It was going to be condos and apartments, but instead it's being used as a short-term rental place called The Level. It was featured on the front page of the LA Times. The same firm is going to the Department of Building and Safety to do a similar conversion for another residential building at 825 South Hill Street, and buildings in Venice and in Hollywood have also been transformed from the housing we desperately need to build to short-term rentals. We need to close that loophole and protect housing for the people of Los Angeles. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Andrew Cohen. I'm here to urge you to vote in support of the short-term rental ordinance. As a resident and voter in Council District 3, I want to talk a little bit about my parents' apartment complex, which over the past several years has become a major hotspot for Airbnb specifically. This is a place typically inhabited by retirees, older people, and in the past few years it's turned into basically a hotel. On any given night there are people having loud parties. There's been a jump in crime. My parents have been or had their apartment broken into and their car broken into, and I think for those of us who live in the valley and have seen prices go up, I can't tell you how infuriating it is to know that there are people operating multiple houses in such a housing shortage that are specifically for throwing parties in. Thanks.
Thank you. Fatima Murrieta, Jose Aguilar.
Good afternoon. My name is Fatima Murrieta. I'm a worker organizer with Unite Here Local 11. I represent hospitality workers in Hollywood, West Hollywood, and Santa Monica. In the past years, I've witnessed city leaders in Santa Monica, and just last night, I witnessed West Hollywood city leaders pass unprecedented legislation to regulate short-term rentals. As a LA city resident, I'm here to urge you to pass strong regulations to protect more working people, just like our neighboring cities have done. A global multi-million-dollar corporation like Airbnb cannot continue to displace working people from their city. Let's take the first step and pass strong legislation now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Aguilar. I live in Council District 9. I am a worker in the DoubleTree Hotel right here in downtown. I'm here today because I really worry about Airbnb's effect on the housing crisis. I live in South LA, and my community is suffering because of high rentals and displacements. We have already lost 5,000 long-term rental units to Airbnbs since the ordinance was introduced. As Airbnb expands its reach, South LA is in risk of losing even more units to short-term rentals. For example, there's a building near USC located on 4051 South Hoover, which is a single host rentals 5 units of the complex on Airbnbs. Those units should be available for my community, passing their regulations of home sharing platforms like Airbnbs will go to a long way to protecting my community from displacements. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. We will come back to general public comment. For now, we'll go through the consent calendar and take up a couple of items. Item number 2 has no public comment cards. We will move that item on consent without objection. Item number 3, we have no public comment cards. We will move that item on consent, no objections. Item number 4, we will move that item on consent. There are no...
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
On item 4?
Yes, you want to call that special?
I do, thank you.
Okay, we'll call that special. Item 4. Item 7, we do have public comment. We'll hold that item as well. Okay. Let's see, item 10, we have no public comments. We will receive and file appeal.
No, I think it's item 9, Councilman, the one that the appeal was withdrawn.
I have this list. Can you read the item 9
Sure.
Which one are you referring to?
Item 9, Councilman, this is an appeal that was filed by Allen Park. It's a building and safety action relative to a haul route located
Yes.
in CD10.
Okay, we will,
That should be if it's the committee's pleasure to deny the appeal since it was withdrawn so late.
we will deny that appeal in as much as it has been withdrawn. So without objection, that'll be the action for item 9. Item 10, we could move on. We could receive and file appeal. There are no public cards on this item. So any objections?
Councilman, the representative for Council District 5 wishes to speak on
Okay,
item 10.
you want to speak on that item? Sure. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. My name is Aviv Kleinman on behalf of Councilmember Koretz. Here to request the committee receive and file this item due to the recent settlement of issues between the neighbors. We would also like the committee request a report back from the Department of Building and Safety to clarify the following code section. LAMC 91.7006.7.1 states, as used in this division, the term export and its derivatives shall be defined as the earth, brush, or similar materials transported from a grading site. We would appreciate if this committee can request clarification on how hauling quantities are determined by the department and the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. So at the request of Council District 5, we will receive and file that item, number 10. Any objections? Seeing no objections, so ordered. Okay, going back to item number 4, if you could read that into the record, please, Mr. Mejia.
Sure. Item 4, Councilman, this is a motion of Krikoria and Blumenfield Martinez. It's instructing building and safety to report back on the progress of the city's mandatory soft story and non-ductile concrete programs.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Great, thank you. I've heard different concerns and issues about how soft story retrofit requirements are handled when it deals with an HOA is involved. It gets a little more complicated. Concerns how, so basically I'm going to ask that we have an additional report back related to issues and concerns of how HOAs and condominium projects are being handled under the soft story retrofit program. So specifically to request the Department of Building and Safety in coordination with planning report back on efforts to address the unique constraints and barriers that are involved in implementing the program when an HOA is present at the site required for a soft story retrofit.
Okay, we will request a report back as we move this motion forward and incorporate it as amending language or a report back separate from the motion, Mr. Blumenfield.
Either way, I don't want to slow it down, but if you can do it as amending language, that's great.
Yeah, it'll be reflected in the committee report the clerk prepares.
Okay, let's do that then. Let's amend the motion to incorporate Mr. Blumenfield's report back request. Yeah.
I can give you the exact language. Great.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Blumenfield.
Thank you.
Any objections to this item? Seeing none, so ordered. All right. Item number 7. If you could read that into the record, please.
Sure. Item 7, Councilman, this is a report from the Cultural Heritage Commission. It relates to the inclusion of the Musicians Union of Hollywood as a cultural heritage monument in CD 13.
Okay. We have staff here to present on this item. Thank
Ken
you.
Bernstein with Department of City Planning and Office of Historic Resources. The Cultural Heritage Commission found that the Musicians Union property met 4 criteria for designation as a historic cultural monument. As an excellent example of an entertainment industry-related union hall in Hollywood, as the headquarters of the first musicians union in the United States to desegregate, as an excellent example of corporate international style architecture in Hollywood, and as a distinctive example of a work by master architect Gordon Kaufman that represents his late career. So the recommendation is for approval as a historic cultural monument.
Great. Thank you. We have 2 public speakers, John Girodo and Craig Bullock from Council District 13.
John Girodo, Vice President of Preservation Issues for Hollywood Heritage. It's a representation today to thank Council Office District 13, Office of Historic Resources, and the developer, Lincoln Properties, in being inclusive and a genuine partnership in the preservation of the Musicians Hall of Hollywood. We hope you take it under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Bullock, and I'm with Council District 13. I am pleased to be here today to express the councilman's support for the inclusion of the Musicians Union Hall as a historic cultural monument. The rich history of the building, the persons associated with it, and the architecture make this an ideal candidate for a historic resource. I particularly want to thank the Office of Historic Resources, especially Lambert Giesinger and Melissa Jones. I'd like to also acknowledge the efforts of Hollywood Heritage and the applicant and the developer Lincoln Properties. They worked over many meetings to reach a consensus that was allowing this project to move forward, showing that historic preservation doesn't have to be incompatible with economic development. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to approve this item. Any objections? Seeing none, so ordered. Thank you. Okay, item number 5.
Item 5, 5, Councilman, this is a ordinance that has been prepared by the city attorney. It's the permanent supportive housing ordinance, and it also includes the addendum to the EIR.
Okay. Staff here to present on this item, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Callie Hardy with the Department of City Planning. Just very briefly, last time we were here on February 13th, your committee directed the Office of the City Attorney to prepare the final permanent supportive housing ordinance with some amendments. One on the additional design standards that were provided in the report back at the last meeting, as well as some additional design standards around height, massing, and setbacks for projects located in the RD 1.5 zone. So the department worked with staff in Council District 3 to draft some amendments that have been included in that final ordinance that would place some additional limits on the incentives that projects will be eligible to receive in the RD 1.5 zone. Specifically, amendments to the floor area ratio incentive, as well as the transitional height requirement. So we kind of felt that with those changes, combined with the other existing restrictions that the ordinance has included on, as well as design standards, we feel that the ordinance does include some fairly strong protections for the lower density zoned areas of the city. Some of those additional kind of things that we included were provisions that would limit the density incentive in the RD 1.5 zone, as well as some restrictions on the existing setback incentive when you're adjacent to a more restrictively zoned property, or if you're in a residential zone. So with that, the department is available for any additional questions on these items, and I would like to turn it over to our colleagues from the Housing and Community Investment Department for a presentation on some of their report back items.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Claudia Monterrosa, and I'm from the Housing and Community Investment Department. And I'm here to provide you with 2 report backs based on instructions issued at the January 17, 2018 Homeless and Poverty Committee that instructed us to establish an appropriate method of determining the number of motel conversion units required per different areas throughout the city of Los Angeles to accomplish a distribution directly correlated to need, such as the point-in-time homeless count or another specific criteria. The same instruction was issued to look at the PSH distribution and HHH distribution. So we issued a report yesterday, and our report outlines HCID findings based on a number of indicators and geospatial analysis that incorporates the city's assessment of fair housing plans, policies, and strategies as the framework to address the same overarching policy concerns outlined in the committee instructions. The following data factors are included in our analysis. The State Opportunity Mapping Tool, which is based, it's a TCAC, an HCID, or the state's method to address some of the fair housing concerns and principles that were also utilized in addressing and informing the assessment of fair housing nationwide. The State Opportunity Mapping Tool establishes a methodology that results into 5 different distinct categories. One is determining or outlining a highest resource area, a high resource area, moderate resource area, a low resource area, and a high segregation and poverty resource area. We also utilize the geographic distribution of PSH and upcoming HHH projects, the location of the existing motels as provided by the Department of City Planning, the eligible land-based lots as provided by the Planning Department, and the 2017 homeless point-in-time count, and the rapid rehousing placement distribution. This is data that we obtained from LASA as of July of 2017 in support of our assessment of fair housing. And that particular set of data really indicates the placements of folks that are receiving services under the Rapid Rehouse Project, including the CES. So HCID LA consistently endeavors to examine current programs and legislations and regulations to help identify solutions to encourage a more equitable distribution of affordable housing resources throughout the city. And in alignment with that, HHH current guidelines do include the inclusion of the small to develop difficult areas, which is a HUD designation. And through that, we provide an incentive for developers to locate their projects in high-cost areas. And at this point, it is too early to really state or to confirm how effective these incentives will be, but stakeholders and the input that we have received so far have indicated that these are valuable efforts. And one of the things that we will continue to do is build on the analysis that we have before us. So I'd like to go into some of the results of that. We completed about 13 different tables and maps that really outline the different distribution and concentration of our existing affordable housing resources as it relates to permanent supportive housing and services. In terms of the geographic distribution in the city, 12 or 25% of the total city's 48 PSH projects are in Council District 14. This represents 898 PSH units. Based on the recent call for projects on HHH, 25% of these are located in CD10 with 190 units. In addition, in addition to the 16 projects, 4 additional HHH projects were recently approved at the HMP committee for projects that are located in Council District 11, 8, and 1. So this is actually now increasing our distribution in the non-segregated areas of the city. In terms of the analysis that we did when we coupled the opportunity areas and the distribution of PSH, we found that in fact nearly 75% of PSH projects are located in either high segregation and poverty and low resource areas. That's a big finding. In terms of our motel inventory, Council District 8 has the largest number of motels in the city, with a total of 71 motels that exist, which makes up about 19% of the total number. The next highest number is located in Council District 9 and City 13 respectively. In the Valley, City 6 has a total of 12 motels, representing a small percentage of the city's overall count, about 3%. And City 12 contains the lowest amount, I think, is at 0.5% in terms of motel inventory. And the majority of the motels are located in low resource and high segregation and poverty resource census tracts. The other finding that we have is that the rapid rehouse placement and the homeless count. So the highest rapid rehouse placement numbers overwhelmingly exist in South Los Angeles in City Council Districts 8, 9, and 10, as well as in a few areas in Council Districts 6 and 15. The homeless count, as everybody is well aware, is concentrated in Council Districts 1, 6, 8, 9, 11, 13, 14, and 15. So about half of the council districts contain the highest number of homeless counts. So what are our observations? Is that the concentration of completed PSH projects and current round of HHH projects are prevalent within the downtown LA and South LA areas. The high segregation and poverty and low resource areas have been a prime investment location for development of PSH projects for over a decade. In terms of the land bases, we did discover that Council Districts 4, 5, and 11 contain a large number of land-based eligible lots for potential opportunities for incentivizing or prioritizing PSH projects in the coming rounds. The majority of motels are in low resource and high segregation and poverty resource areas, with the concentration of these in City 8 and 9. But we also identified good opportunities for motel conversions in highest and high and moderate resource areas in Council Districts 2, 3, 5, 11, and 15. So in conclusion, HCID has collected and analyzed key factors to help understand the current distribution of PSH and HHH and potential motel conversions throughout the city. And one of our immediate next steps will be to build off of this and really include some of the results of this analysis in our upcoming HHH guidelines and really align further with the funding priorities at the state level, since we did utilize a tool that is being developed and is being utilized now by the state housing department and also by the TCAC allocation committee. So we're happy to entertain any questions, but this is essentially a report and file for you this afternoon. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So thank you very much for those reports, and it's great to see this ordinance before us that will expedite the construction of permanent supportive housing. This is a continuation of the implementation of our comprehensive strategic plan on combating homelessness. HHH was part of that, as is this, and obviously it's good to see that we're moving forward on all of these. The item, the information presented to us from our housing department is very informative and valuable, because in our comprehensive strategic plan to combat homelessness, we put there as one of the principles that we want to decentralize services and not continue to build homeless services and homeless housing in areas that have always accepted them, and we continue to concentrate them there. As we approve the guidelines for Measure HHH, we also put language in there that applications will receive additional points should they be located in areas that have not accepted permanent supportive housing. And the data that the housing department presents makes it very clear that we do have a concentration of homeless services, and we have a long way to go to provide housing throughout the city. As you mentioned, 55% of the city's completed permanent supportive housing projects and HHH allocations are in high segregation and poverty areas. It seems like the east side of Los Angeles, along with the south, reflect the highest number of HHH pre-development units. The majority of the city's HHH units, which is 67% in pre-development phase. So while we do have some applications that are coming in that are for areas that have historically not accepted permanent supportive housing, it seems like we still are primarily putting them in areas that have had a history of concentration of homeless services. So at some point we have to get serious about this and see how we redirect that, because I just don't see it happening with the applications that have come in. But this is a type of information that we could use to help redirect that and hopefully move homeless housing throughout the city, because after all, we know that it not only benefits communities to have have a concentration of any type of service, whether it's homeless, or you don't put 12 churches in one location, one neighborhood, you don't put 12 schools in one location. But it also helps the individuals who are experiencing homelessness because they have a support network in their neighborhood, as opposed to shipping them off to Skid Row or Hollywood or Venice or other areas that historically we've built these units. So we have some corrections to do, I think, in the allocation of HHH dollars. It says it's in our strategic plan, it says it's in our HHH funding guidelines, but we still haven't done that. So thank you for the report, and hopefully with this ordinance, as we expedite more units, we could hopefully start redirecting them throughout the city. So thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Blumenfield?
And just a quick comment. I do want to thank the department, city attorney. They did a quick turnaround on this. Obviously, we're all excited. It's overdue. We need to do this, but particularly working with me on my team on the RD 1.5 issue and getting that squared away. I do appreciate it, and just wanted to thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Englander?
Just a question on, in terms of notification, what I didn't see in here. What kind of notification will there be as these projects move forward vis-a-vis to the council office or the community neighborhood council, et cetera?
Arthi Varma with the Planning Department. In the existing permanent supportive housing ordinance, there is a notification requirement that would require the city to send notification on pending permits 30 days prior to the projects going through. There is also a requirement for posting at the project site. That's in the
Okay, so it's, walk me through again the notification. I didn't hear that last part either. 30 days prior to the what?
It's 30 days prior to the granting of the permit for the PSH project.
Okay, so the notification will be done 30 days prior, and the notification goes to whom?
It goes to the council offices, it goes to the abutting properties, and Callie, you can maybe jump in if I'm missing anybody else.
That's correct. The notification would go to the council office and the abutting property owners, as well as being posted on the site.
I had several neighborhood councils that asked me to weigh in on that. Could we ask that the notification also be sent to, it's a notification, just so they know what's going on in the community, to the neighborhood councils that are affected in those areas as well?
Sure, they receive most land use issues.
But this,
Sure,
this one they're not slated to.
Yeah, okay.
Right, so
We'll
we can
make
just add
that amendment if, we'll make that friendly, we'll make that amendment.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go to public comment now. Each speaker has 1 minute. Any other questions or comments? Gary Tobin, Larray Cantley. Arnold is the last name. Linda Arnold.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for taking up items 5 and 6 today. We think that they are very, very significant. As a representative of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce and our business community, we know how important these two ordinances would be to addressing what the voters wanted to do when they passed HHH about 15 months ago. We thank you for looking at these two, and we urge you to support both measures. This has been a great day so far because in this council chambers earlier today, you said let's move forward with the Lorena Plaza project. This is 2 more big steps. They're important steps, and while I'm sure you'll have some criticism, I urge you to support both measures. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Tobin, for the Chamber's work on working with the City Council on making sure we move forward with permanent supportive housing funding and your campaign support for Measure HHH as well. Thank you. Cantley?
Good afternoon. I also am in support of, and I'm thanking you all for your works in doing your part. I have been a part of getting the signatures for the measure to be passed. I am also a CSH Speak Up advocate, a formerly homeless resident who lives in Los Angeles. I'm a mother of 4, and my homelessness was a direct result of domestic violence. So with those supportive services, I am no longer a victim, I am a survivor. I also get services for mental health, which allows me to be employable today. There's lots of services that are available that has allowed for me to be in this work, and that I can be an advocate and no longer just be one who is stuck in the hopelessness. So if you ever have seen the light in the eyes of a person who've gotten the keys to their home, just continue to look for that, and I urge you to support without hesitation.
Thank you. Linda Arnold, Amy Anderson, Brendan O'Donnell.
My name is Linda. I'm a CSH Speak Up advocate. I also have experienced decades of homelessness and a lot of trauma, because trauma comes to us when we don't have a safe place to be and a safe place to sleep. It's bad out there in the streets. I don't know if I was more scared of the rats or the rapists, because I live in supportive housing now, and I've been there for 4 years now. It is the best thing that has ever happened to me. I highly wish that I'm supportive for supportive housing, and I just pray and hope that you please continue to build the housing, because it's bad out there in the streets. I don't know anybody who wants to be homeless, but I do know that we can get better. Most people can get better with help from supportive housing and help from people who care. I know at least 100 people whose life have changed as a direct result of supportive housing. Supportive housing can end this homeless epidemic and make our city a safer place for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Anderson.
Good afternoon, Amy Anderson, Executive Director of Path Ventures. I want to thank the committee for bringing the ordinance back to the hearing so quickly and urge you to pass it on to council as it's been presented to you by staff this afternoon. I think it's important to acknowledge that the PSH ordinance is asking community members and neighborhood councils to give up a level of participation in the development process. And that can be hard. There are rules and regulations. It feels like we should always abide by those rules and regulations. But we're in the midst of a housing affordability and homelessness crisis of unprecedented scale. And just as supportive housing developers have been asked historically to give up scale, to give up units, to give up height, we're now asking community members and the council leadership to compromise on participation and to compromise and provide flexibility on development standards so we can create more homes and more homes quickly for neighbors experiencing homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you. Brendan O'Donnell, Maria Palacio, Jessica Corisi.
Good afternoon. My name is Brendan O'Donnell. I'm with the Skid Row Housing Trust. I'm here to speak in strong support of item number 5. Given the current and growing crisis of homelessness, it's vitally important to accelerate the development of permanent supportive housing here in Los Angeles to serve the city's most vulnerable population. Strongly encourage the committee to approve the ordinance as currently presented by staff, as it has already taken into account the insights and experience and lessons learned of many people who have successfully built permanent supportive housing for many, many years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maria Palacio. I'm here on behalf of Lincoln Heights. I'd just like to state that Lincoln Heights is opposed to the five development lots. In regards to Gil Cedillo, has not showed any transparency and has not informed the community onto what those lots would consist of. We do support PSH, but we don't support mixed market rate housing. And the community is worried about why is there 5 lots placed into the one community, one concentrated area. The councilman has failed to attend 2 neighborhood council meetings, and we would like to address that as to why he hasn't attended and informed the community on anything that has been occurring. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Carisi and Jessica Lan or Can.
Good afternoon, Jessica Correa, Senior Program Manager at the Corporation for Supportive Housing. CSH is a national nonprofit partnering with communities to end homelessness through the creation of permanent supportive housing. We know that a lack of affordable housing is the biggest cause of homelessness in Los Angeles. In fact, while our partners in LA housed more homeless people than ever before in 2016, the number of Angelenos experiencing chronic homelessness increased for one reason, and one reason alone. A growing number of Angelenos are unable to afford an apartment on their income and access the support they need to obtain and stabilize in healthy housing. Both item number 5, the Permanent Supportive Housing Ordinance, and item number 6 will allow Angelenos access to an affordable and safe place to call home and will expand the deeply needed housing opportunities across the city. For these reasons, we strongly support both these ordinances, and today your action will help move our neighbors out of homelessness and into an opportunity to address the needs of each of your constituents, housed or otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Law. Mark Toisknant. Welcome.
Hello. Good afternoon. I'm Jessica Law with the Central City Association. Just excited to be here today to express our strong support for both the Permanent Supportive Housing Ordinance as well as the Interim Motel Conversion Ordinance to adopt it as presented. This ordinance is a great example of a production-based approach to creating housing for those most in need. In order for this ordinance to fully work, it's critical to maintain the no parking requirements for the housing units. Resident parking at supportive housing projects is consistently underutilized. We want to thank the City Planning Department for their work on this, and thank you for your consideration today.
Thank you. I think it's Mark, is it? Rachel Kassenbrock.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Tusignan with Enterprise Community Partners. We're a national nonprofit intermediary, financial and technical assistance intermediary for the affordable housing sector. And we're here to strongly support item number 5 and urge the committee to move this ordinance forward as is. This ordinance makes a lot of sense on for a few levels. Certainly the fact that this is good public policy. This was a collaborative process with a lot of input from practitioners. It complements our work around Triple H, the homeless strategies that are in place, and the need to build housing adjacent to transit. Secondly, we feel like it strikes a good balance between the compatibility with existing zoning requirements and the flexibility that our supportive housing development community needs, particularly elevating the site plan threshold and the parking requirements. And finally, given the circumstances in the city, we need to do things quicker and faster, and this ordinance helps us get there. So strongly urge you to move it on. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Rachel Kassenbrock, Ren Ross, Catherine Hicks. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Rachel Kassenbrock, and I'm here from the Downtown Women's Center. I'm also here today to show our strong support for item number 5. As we all know, permanent supportive housing is an urgently needed resource for tens of thousands of homeless Angelenos, more than a third of whom are women. In 2016, the Downtown Women's Needs Assessment survey of women who are experiencing homelessness in Skid Row found that more than 90% had experienced some form of sexual or physical violence, many of whom on a regular basis. The longer these women are forced to spend their nights in shelters and on the streets of our city, the longer these horrific conditions will continue for them. This ordinance will remove unnecessary barriers and reduce the costs and time it takes to develop the housing this city so desperately needs. For these reasons, we urge you to move forward this ordinance today without further changes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ren Ross, Catherine Hicks, Frank Romero, Steve Diaz.
Good afternoon. My name is Ren Ross from New Directions for Veterans. I'm also a veteran of the Iraq and Afghanistan war myself, and I have the privilege to stand up here in support of the permanent supportive housing ordinance. Not only do I help the veterans find these permanent supportive housing units, but I also help implement the supportive services that they need once they've moved in. And having more units for these veterans is crucial in this time frame. If you get a chance to look in their eyes when they get housed and see for the first time a community that has supported them after decades of being left in the weeds, left alone, then you would know how important this is to our fellow veterans and to the communities involved. We take community outreach very seriously, and we take those conversations very seriously because we know how important it is. And our veterans want to be a positive member of our communities. And not only did the voters implement the Measure H funding, but they also kept us in charge of the services that are tied to those units, in which we take very seriously as a veteran organization. And I want to thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Catherine Hicks. I'm with League of Women Voters, and I urge the council, all of us do, to move forward today with no changes for the permanent supportive housing and the motel conversion ordinance. There's so many human hearts waiting to be helped and so many hardworking people. I know you've seen them all every day, all day, so thank you.
Thank you. Frank Romero, Steve Diaz, Jerry Newman.
Thank you, Chairman and the members of the committee. My name is Frank Romero, and I represent the United Way of Greater Los Angeles and one of tens of thousands of voters who supported Proposition HHH, funding supportive housing across this city. I'm speaking in support of the permanent supportive housing ordinance and urge the members of the Plum Committee to approve PSH and the interim motel conversion ordinances as is and move this straight to council. The general public is ready to support permanent solutions to ending homelessness across LA County. An article on KPCC was published this morning that showed almost 70% of respondents would support a proposal to build supportive housing for our homeless neighbors in their neighborhood, not somewhere far away, not in the desert, not in Skid Row, but in their neighborhood, 70% of respondents. And so for United Way, and as well as our other stakeholders, we're ready to educate, activate, and organize this silent majority who will vocalize their support for building supportive housing and build the homes that we need to address this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Diaz, Jerry Newman, Claudia Agraz, and George Cabrera.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Steve Diaz, and I am with the Los Angeles Community Action Network, LA CAN. We do community organizing in the communities of South Central Los Angeles and Skid Row, LA. First off, there's not enough housing in Skid Row and we need more. Second off, we're here in support of the permanent supportive housing ordinance and the motel conversion ordinance as well. A 46% increase in homelessness, over 550,000 units needed just to meet the affordability crisis. Enough said. There's no need to talk about it anymore. The time right now is to stop talking and start voting and moving it forward as is. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Newman, Claudia, and George Cabrera.
Councilmember Huizar, members of Plum, my name is Jerry Newman. I have the honor of serving as chair of Home for Good on the executive committee of the United Way and the LA Chamber of Commerce, chair of the board of Hollywood Community Housing, and on the executive board of US Vets. From that position, it is something that I have come to understand that more than ever, we have a mountain to climb in solving the problem of homelessness and the need for permanent supportive housing. It is essential that the permanent supportive housing ordinance and the hotel conversion ordinance get passed as is. Having that mountain to climb, the essential equipment that we need is contained in those ordinances, and it is through that equipment that we will make the progress we have to make. And so we appreciate the time and effort that staff has spent on creating these ordinances, and we implore you to make sure that you pass them, hopefully as is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Newman, for your campaigning on HHH as well. You're all over the city campaigning on it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a resident of Lincoln Heights. I am here to oppose item number 5 for 5 projects of a housing built at our community. We have the 5 parking structures, and we've had some residents and sales that will be going down, and also the elderly rely on these parking lots for shopping as they cannot find parking because our community is already very overpopulated. So these projects will also be a nuisance as far as not having enough space for our community and concerns. And we are getting 5 we are getting 5 projects in Lincoln Heights for the 5 parking lots. So it's not being divided equally throughout the city of Los Angeles as we're getting more. Thank you.
Thank you. George Cabrera, Jerry Jones.
Good afternoon to members of the Plum Committee. My name is George Cabrera, a member of the Coalition to Protect Lincoln Heights, and I'm also the marketing director for our local community newspaper, the Community Beacon. I'm here this afternoon to oppose the project, and I want to share how this project will affect our community of Lincoln Heights. First of all, there has been 2 neighborhood council meetings, and Councilman Gil Cedillo has not attended these meetings at all. In both of these meetings, we have had a full house attendance of close to 200 people with various concerns, Mr. Chairman. The subject of the 5 parking lots has been brought up, and with no response from Councilman Cedillo, the community of Lincoln Heights has been deceived and were not told at the last minute of this development project. We feel that this project development is approved by the business corridor of Lincoln Heights will be devastated by the homeless community. In closing, the 5 parking lots in the community of Lincoln Heights will not tolerate this project development. Councilman Gilbert Cedillo has not been transparent with the community of Lincoln Heights. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jones.
Hi, Jerry Jones with Inner City Law Center. Support the PSH ordinance, one of the goals of which is to lessen City Hall's heavy involvement in the process and to let the housing department make ministerial decisions based on the merits of the project and how well that project conforms to objective standards. Building affordable housing has been harder and slower in the city than it should be, with all due respect, in part because City Hall is too involved in the details. And so, in light of that, I would encourage you to pass the permanent supportive housing ordinance as you have it before you, that less is more in this instance, and we urge you to resist adding further amendments that are unrelated to the design or purpose of permanent supportive housing. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment. Any questions or, yes, sir. Okay, you could come on up and speak. And if you could do me a favor, for the record, after you speak, if you could fill out a card and give it to the Sergeant at Arms, please. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Will Wright with the American Institute of Architects here in Los Angeles. Here to share our strong support for the Permanent Supportive Housing Ordinance. We're also here to share our accolades to the Planning Department for moving this forward along with the HCID LA. And the one thing I can add to the public record for any of those that are concerned about adding more permanent supportive housing into their neighborhood, this is often the most beautiful housing that Los Angeles is currently building. We're winning national design awards with this type of housing. I encourage everybody to take a tour of some of these outstanding projects that are currently have been built. I think our affordable housing developers are doing everything they possibly can to bring design to the forefront. So thank you for your time and your leadership.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and certainly that's a point that we made as we went throughout the city to campaign for Measure HHH, that these units should be like any other housing structure being built in the neighborhoods. They're no different than those. Any other questions or comments on this item? No questions or comments, so let's move this item, the final ordinance, to full council. And if we could amend it to include Mr. Englander's amendment to provide notice to the neighborhood councils. Also, we would like to make an amendment for Council District 10 to include oil or gas well in section 13.4 on page 12 of the ordinance as a previous use that would require the search of databases of sites containing hazardous waste or hazardous materials. And I think the planning department, you recommended 2 amendments, or what was, did you? No? Not on this one, right? That's it, okay.
Yeah, Kevin Keller, City Planning, that will be for the next item.
Okay, gotcha, okay. So on this item, we will move it with those 2 amendments to notify the neighborhood council and to include oil or gas into the hazardous waste or hazardous materials databases of sites.
So those amendments will be reflected in the ordinance that goes to the council.
Okay. Thank you very much. And do we have a placeholder in council yet?
I'm not sure. Maybe
We do not yet? Okay. All right, any objections to that motion? Seeing none, so ordered. Okay, thank you. Next item is item number 6.
Item 6, Councilman, this is a city attorney. It's a city attorney prepared ordinance again as it relates to the temporary use of motels and hotels for supportive housing.
Thank you. Staff here to present on this item?
Good afternoon, Arthi Varma with the Planning Department. We will provide a brief overview of our report back that we released regarding the interim motel conversion ordinance. I'd like to introduce Callie Hardy, who will give us a brief presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, and good afternoon. Again, Callie Hardy with the Department of City Planning. Just very, very brief kind of verbal update on some of the key points of the report back that has been submitted in response to the direction from the committee at the last meeting. First, the committee requested some additional information on the feasibility of incorporating some potential amendments to the ordinance to require either council approval, acknowledgement, or notification. So the proposed ordinance as drafted would permit interim motel housing projects to be approved through an over-the-counter administrative procedure with the Department of Building and Safety, and would not trigger any sort of city council discretionary action. So any standards that would be approved as part of a ministerial procedure must be objective in nature. So if the City Council had a desire to introduce a requirement for council approval or acknowledgement, there would be sort of other entitlement pathways that might be more appropriate. And that would also require basically a discretionary process with required findings of approval that would go through review with the Department of City Planning, the City Planning Commission, and then the full City Council. If instead the intent was would be to create a noticing requirement that would apply to all potential projects through the proposed ministerial process. There could be opportunity for a new procedure to create or to require council office notification prior to issuance of a building permit. The committee also requested additional information on a possible prohibition for properties that are in the process of any nuisance abatement or revocation proceedings. So the proposed ordinance as written did not include a prohibition for such properties. And the outcome of any sort of pending nuisance abatement proceeding is a fact-specific determination that is made by the zoning administrator. Any property that has had its use revoked as a result of that process would not be eligible for conversion through this program. But also as a part of this process, the zoning administrator has the authority to impose conditions that are tailored to the unique conditions of the property. Any conditions that are imposed through that process would apply and continue to apply as applicable to an interim motel housing project. And so all property owners would be required to adhere to any of those conditions, even after that conversion occurs, since they run with the land. So for example, if the nuisance condition required a no loitering sign or required a security guard, those conditions would continue to be required moving forward. Any future application for modification of those conditions would also be subject to a public hearing process with the zoning administrator. And so many of the issues that could contribute to the nuisance use could also be cured through that existing abatement process, as well as kind of considering that there would be the introduction of a new use and a new operator. The committee also requested information about additional operational requirements and performance standards, including looking at additional security features and on-site service provision. So if the City Council would like to include additional standards related to operational security and maintenance, that would be applicable to all motel conversions. These would be more broad in nature than those that would be applied through the nuisance abatement process, as they would be addressing broader concerns and not just site-specific conditions. So to that end, the department has suggested 2 new potential objective performance standards related to security lighting, as well as recycling and trash facilities in the report back, which could be incorporated into the proposed ordinance upon direction from this committee. Regarding the on-site property management and service provision, there is existing state law that requires all residential properties with at least 16 dwelling units and all hotels with at least 12 guest rooms to provide basically a residential live-in property manager. As a zoning ordinance, the motel conversion ordinance also has requirements around the provision of on-site supportive service space. Any sort of staffing and operational procedures related to those services would be outlined in the required supportive services plan. And that plan is evaluated and approved by the local public agency that is providing the funding and the oversight for these programs. So that's really the agency that's verifying the level of on-site supportive services and case management and ensuring that it's appropriately scaled to meet the needs of the residents. And additionally, do want to mention that the property managers typically do maintain emergency contact information for case managers as well as the housing operator if services are needed outside of those regularly scheduled hours. Lastly, the council requested some additional information regarding implementation, including ongoing monitoring and code inspections. So the Department of Building and Safety will be maintaining a database of all interim motel housing projects that are approved as a result of this ordinance. And that database would include information on the expiration date of those contract terms with the service provider. So the proposed ordinance also includes a requirement for applicants to notify DBS within 90 days of the termination of that contract. And then DBS would have the authority to issue an order to comply to enforce any use violations for properties that are operating without that valid contract. Additionally, the Department of City Planning would also be doing ongoing reporting on the number of interim motel housing projects that would be approved as part of this ordinance, and that would be part of our ongoing reporting on the comprehensive homeless strategy. All interim motel housing projects would also be required to meet all code standards and would be required to pass inspection with building and safety before they could issue any building permit. So that inspection would also ensure that the entire property that's being used for the interim motel housing project would be in compliance with building code and that all fire life safety requirements are being met. Additionally, building and safety would be ensuring that all outstanding orders to comply would be resolved prior to issuance of any permit. The last thing I do want to mention is just also upon conversion, properties would become subject to HCID's systematic code enforcement program, which would additionally require ongoing inspections as long as that valid contract is in place. So with that, the department appreciates the opportunity for additional discussion of these items, and we're available to answer any questions as they arise.
Great. Thank you. Are there any questions on this item? Mr. Bloomfield?
Thank you. Thrilled about this. Moving forward on this, it's a critical part of our strategy. I was concerned a little bit, although I saw a memo today from Department of Disability, and I just want to ask a little bit about how we're going to deal with conversion and making sure that we're meeting all ADA standards. As you know, and that they pointed out in their memo, about 19% of homeless are currently physically disabled. And so the question is, how are we accommodating them both in terms of these conversions, but also because we have had issues in the past with getting sued quite a bit on different housing projects. How are we going to make sure that that we're also legally, that we're both morally protected and that we're providing the right housing for folks, and that we're legally protected so that if we do trigger anything, like you mentioned, HCID code enforcement, or just the fact that now Deep Pockets own the building or are operating it, that we're not going to get sued on ADA stuff and take on these liabilities. How are we going to protect ourselves and do the right thing?
Arthi Varma with the Planning Department. Nothing in this ordinance would exempt operators entirely from the requirements under ADA, and I can have our colleagues at DBS to sort of explain what the process is for projects that are subject to ADA requirements, but this ordinance does not propose any exemptions from that process as part of the streamlining.
Hi, this is Catherine Nowaskagawa, Building and Safety. It really depends on the scope of work. If it's just a change of use, if it is publicly funded, we are requiring them to upgrade for ADA requirements or disabled access requirements. However, if it is not publicly funded, they are not subject to it if they're not doing more than $180,000, and they can do a hardship, 20% hardship towards any improvement in accessibility. With that in mind, if they actually adhere to those requirements, we're not subject to.
So if I understand, if we spend more than $180,000 on renovation, that triggers the ADA requirements.
That is correct. If it's more than $180,000, they are.
So if we spend $170,000, but we pick up a motel that's out of compliance,
we would require them to do 20% of that $170,000 to go towards, like, say, the ramp for the entrance, the elevators that are not they're not in compliance. They will have to upgrade that and total up to the 20% of that, which is $34,000 that they have to apply to.
So regardless of how much we spend, if we spend $10, we have to do 20% of that has to go toward ADA compliance?
That is correct.
Okay, and we self-monitor that?
Correct. We look at the scope of work and we assess what the valuation would be and require them as such.
And does that get us, I know federal guidelines are like 1 out of every 25 units has to be ADA accessible. Does that get us in that range, or is that?
Well, federal and the state has always differed, but it has been coincide lately with the code changes, so I don't see any issues with having that requirements or having them adhere to those requirements.
To the federal requirement? Are we adhering to the federal requirements too?
Well, Building and Safety does not have any jurisdiction on the federal requirements, but the state requirements. However, the state and federal have been consistent in as far as the requirements for disabled access.
Not always. We got
Not
sued
always.
recently, and
Like, for example, the bars, they're about a few inches off. I mean,
but that's. I just don't want us to get sued again for the same thing that we've gotten sued
if
for.
it is public funded, we will require it, and I believe housing has reviewed some of the publicly funded buildings to adhere to those requirements. at least federal.
Yeah, maybe we get the city attorney to opine on this as well, just to be clear, if that's appropriate. But as you know, we've had this issue has cost us a lot of money.
This is Kevin Keller from City Planning as the city attorney takes the seat. I know that the ordinance in front of us is pretty much a building and safety and city planning zoning code amendment, but to speak about any complications, if there are any on the funding side, perhaps the city attorney could fill us in on that.
Or if there's something that we need to do to inoculate ourselves appropriately, I want to make sure we're at least thinking about it.
Good afternoon, Rushmore Cervantes with the Housing and Community Development Department. Right now, with federal funds, the requirement is 5% mobility impaired, 2% sensory, which is hearing or vision. Under the tax credits allocation through the state, we actually go up to 10% and 4% of those same categories. So that's our standard right now, which is we're exceeding what the federal minimum requirements are right now. As you know, with many conversations we've had relative to the lawsuit, we're exceeding that right now. So that is our provision on a go-forward basis for the last 3 years, 10 and 4.
And the money used for this doesn't trigger that. If it's our own Measure H dollars, it doesn't trigger.
The
But there
city
are
as a
probably
whole is
other.
committed to that. It actually benefits the city as a whole if we've got permanent units that are going to fall into those two categories. That helps us with our overall goal of achieving the number of units that were called out for in the settlement of 4,000 units. So either we get it through rehabilitation, new units as we're doing now, but also in conversion of hotel motels, we should be able to count those as well. That's great.
And Councilman Bloomingfield, Capri Maddox with Los Angeles City Attorney's Office. I'd also like to remind the committee that we're using county funds and not city funds, so we're not subject to the lawsuit requirements from the recent ADA lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles. We're using county funds for the motel conversion program.
Does that inoculate us from getting sued?
No, it doesn't, but the recent ADA lawsuit settlement requiring additional units would not apply to these properties. I should clarify that Brilliant Corners is present, and Brilliant Corners is the service provider for the county Measure H funded program, and they actually have a history of adding additional ADA compliant units to their properties.
Okay. All right. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Price?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to thank the Planning Department, Building Safety, HCA, City Attorney's Office.
Microphone.
Hard work. Last week, I expressed concerns. Thank you. I expressed concerns about the role that nuisance motels play in our community, and as having the second largest concentration of them, my concerns remain the same. I don't want this program to be an easy way out for problem properties, and they want to make sure that they are responsible to the community for their nuisances. So I'm glad to see the confirmation from the Planning Department that conditions imposed on motels as a result of nuisance abatement proceedings run with the land and are going to be applicable in any interim motel housing project. I think that's very important. Keeping these safeguards in place is critical for my support, and I'm sure the community support as well. I also want to thank the Planning Department's recommendations regarding lighting, trash enclosures, and security. It's important to me that we set performance standards for these projects so that we can ensure the local community that we're going to do everything we can to keep them and the project site safe. And I believe that this tightens up the ordinance in a way that makes everyone more responsible. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to request that we adopt the report recommendations regarding performance standards, specifically the inclusion of security, lighting, and recycling, and trash facility enclosures as a part of our ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? We have no public comment cards. We had 2 public comment cards, but those speakers have had already spoken on one other item, and those were to be included in the multiple item comment period. So with that, we'll move to approve this item with the incorporation of 2 amendments. One is as proposed by Mr. Price on the performance standards, and the other is to provide a noticing requirement per planning department's recommendation. And Mr. Blumenfield, were your concerns addressed?
I think they were. I was going to do a motion, but I think they're addressed.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we will move forward with those 2 recommendations, those 2 amendments. Any other questions or comments? No objections to the motion?
Council members, if I may interrupt, just in terms of clarifying for the record, the additional notice procedure, we had provided some background in general. I didn't know if the committee was moving to include that or not. Maybe our staff could just ask a clarifying question if we could.
Yeah, Arthi Varma with the Planning Department. We had suggested that there was a couple of different methods for notification. Callie Hardy in her presentation mentioned that we can certainly handle the noticing on an administrative level. There we do have a database of motels. While it's not comprehensive, we can certainly work with the council offices and with the HCID and our partner or departments here to put together as comprehensive of a list as possible. We can work with our colleagues at Building and Safety to flag those properties so that the council offices get notification whenever an interim motel conversion ordinance, an interim motel conversion permit is received. So that's one option that we can sort of handle administratively. In our report, we mentioned that if there are further noticing requirements that are desired by the council, we could model the LADBS demolition noticing requirements that are also in our permit supportive housing ordinance. So those are 2 options, really. One administrative, the other would require an amendment to the ordinance.
The administrative noticing requirement, that's what we intend to move.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any objections? Seeing none, so ordered. Thank you. Next item, Mr. Mejia, Calbear.
The next item, Councilman, it's a Cultural Heritage Commission report relative to the inclusion of Beneficial Plaza and Liberty Park as historic cultural monuments in CD 10.
Okay, staff here on this item?
Yes, good afternoon again. Ken Bernstein with Department of City Planning and Office of Historic Resources. What is before you is a historic cultural monument application for Beneficial Plaza and Liberty Park, which is comprised of an 11-story office tower with a 3-level underground parking garage, a plaza and park on the south side of Wilshire Boulevard. The Cultural Heritage Commission recommendation was that the nomination successfully meets 3 of the historic cultural monument criteria. First, as reflecting the broad cultural, economic, or social history of the community for its association with the post-World War II development of the Wilshire Center Business District, as well for reflecting the concept of dedicating private corporate property as community open space along Wilshire Boulevard. There were concerted decisions made by the developer as well as by the city to dedicate and protect this as open space to protect it from future development back in the 1960s. Secondly, is an excellent example of late modern architectural style office tower, as exhibited by its bold geometric forms, exoskeleton structural frame, and unpainted textured wall surfaces. And finally, as a notable work of a master designer, as both a significant work of SOM, Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill, with prominent architects Gordon Bunshaft and Edward Charles Bassett of that significant architectural firm, and as an excellent example of a designed landscape, Liberty Park, designed by the noted landscape architect Peter Walker, who at the time was with the renowned landscape architecture firm Sasaki, Walker and Associates, and later responsible for many other significant design landscapes, including the 9/11 Memorial in New York City. So the Cultural Heritage Commission recommendation was to approve historic cultural monument designation.
Thank you. Okay, a couple of questions. The applicant, Annette Van Duren, are you here? Okay, and also, before you begin, the owner, Wilshire Park Place North, any representative here for them? No, there's no representative here for the owner? Okay. I just didn't see it in the cards, but that's fine. One final thing is, I see several cards here that say that they're donating their time to somebody. We do not donate time in public comment. You could guess what happens. People come and fill out cards and donate time, and the person's not here, so we don't do that as a rule. So as I call your name, you could either waive your time to speak or speak. Okay. But first, the applicant, you have 5 minutes. Thank you. And if their sergeant at arms or someone can move the seat there so I could see the clock, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. I'm Annette Van Duren of Save Liberty Park, and I'm the applicant of the nomination before you. Koreatown residents, myself included, have long valued this cultural landscape as a community asset. While it is private property, it is a cherished historic place on busy Wilshire Boulevard that continues to enhance the aesthetics of Koreatown, a true visual oasis of sophisticated design and serene green space. The nomination is recommended for designation by both the Office of Historic Resources and the Cultural Heritage Commission, and has the strong support of Council President Herb Wesson, whose leadership in prioritizing preservation of this iconic site we greatly appreciate. I urge the Plum Committee to recommend designation of this irreplaceable cultural landscape, which represents the best in urban planning and commercial design and deserves to be recognized and protected as a historic cultural monument. Thank you.
Thank you. Sola Shen. Nancy Lee, Robert Medina. Sola Shin. Nancy Lee and Robert Medina.
Good afternoon. My name is Sola Shen. I'm a resident of Koreatown, and my family has ties to the community for the past 40 years now. I'm very proud of our community, and but one of the things is that it's rapidly developing, and while there's many benefits to that, I see a lot of old-time residents getting shut out, displaced, and wondering what all this development is for if it's not for the people who live there. And I think having a public space, trees, parks, that's one of the great equalizers of the city, and I think it's really necessary that we keep it there. And that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nancy Lee, and I'm also a resident of Koreatown. I support making Liberty Park a historic monument and making this green space forever accessible to the public. As someone who was born and raised in Koreatown, this space has many cherished memories for me, and I can't imagine replacing it with any other park. The space itself is really important for the community, and I urge you to support this measure. Thanks.
Thank you. Robert Medina, Brittany Coe, Catherine Yang. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Robert Medina, and I stand with the Koreatown community. I support making the Liberty Park property a historic cultural monument and green space accessible to the public forever.
Hi, I'm Brittany Coe. I work in Koreatown as an educator, and I'd like to support the Liberty Park property becoming a historical cultural monument and making this green space accessible to the public forever. I think it's really important for students around the neighborhood to have a place to go, especially like some of them haven't even been to the beach, and that's only 15 miles away. So I feel like the green space right there being accessible is really important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Yang, James Che, Jose Eduardo Sanchez.
Hi, my name is Catherine Yang, and I'm here representing KIWA, Koreatown Immigrant Workers Alliance, and myself as a resident in Koreatown. As you know, Koreatown is the densest and most park-poor neighborhood in Los Angeles, and Liberty Park has been the fixture of Koreatown for the past 50 years, hosting multiple big events, drawing in thousands of people to Koreatown. And our neighborhood is becoming more and more dense with 50-plus luxury developments coming in, becoming a concrete jungle, ignoring the needs of working-class individuals and families who do not have the access to regularly go to other neighborhoods or go to nature. We feel that our representatives must support Liberty Park being a historic cultural monument for the needs of our community as a healthy and thriving one. Thank you.
Thank you. James Che, not here. Jose Eduardo Sanchez, not here. Barbara Hensley, Ann Kim, Kisuk Jun. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Barbara Hensley. I represent almost 4,000 members of the Sierra Club in the Central Group of Los Angeles, which encompasses Los Angeles and Koreatown and Liberty Park. And I'm part of a chapter as well that represents almost 50,000 current members of the Sierra Club. And our offices are on 325 Wilshire Boulevard, just a few blocks from Liberty Park. And so I'm here today to support the historical cultural designation for the park. And I think you guys will be on the right side of history. This is a historic moment, and you are doing the right thing. And I liked what somebody else said about the building in Hollywood and its historic designation. Its historic preservation isn't incompatible with economic progress. And I think you can do both here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Kim.
Hello, my name is Ann Kim. I represent Save Liberty Park. I also live in Koreatown. Good afternoon. I am here representing the voices of over 1,200 residents of Koreatown and beyond. As you can see, many are here today to show their love and support for preserving Beneficial Plaza and Liberty Park. Liberty Park is a symbol of unity and good health of the community. In order to save the park and 3700 Wilshire, many residents donated their hard-earned money to hire historical architectural consultant to prepare a report for the Cultural Heritage Commission. The money did not come from interest groups or one rich person. I hope you listen to our united voices, accept the determination and recommendation from the LA City Cultural Heritage Commission and the City Planning Department. Thank you.
Thank you. Kisuk Jun, Marcelo Vavala, Keith Chris G, and Nair Park.
How are you?
Good.
First of all, I want to hand over the petition to preserve Liberty Park. Over more 1,015 people is signed the petition. Can I hand over?
Yes, hand over to the sergeant at arms.
1,015 persons. My name is Ki-Suk Jun. I'm a Wilshire Center and Koreatown Neighborhood Council member. Why we have to preserve the Liberty Park? First, the glass plaza in front of Radio Korea building is the last remaining green recreational space left in the Wilshire Koreatown district. Number two, the planned construction and the resulting structure would exacerbate the traffic problem and insufficient parking, traffic jam. existing in the Wilshire-Oxford and Wilshire-Serrano intersections. Number 3, the plaza space to be occupied by new building is multi-use, multi-recreational event site with a contribution to the community ranging from local concert to regional festival. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcelo? Not, yes?
Good afternoon, council members. Marcello Vavala with the Los Angeles Conservancy. The Conservancy is in strong support of the nomination for Beneficial Plaza and Liberty Park, which is recommended for designation by the Office of Historic Resources and the Cultural Heritage Commission. The nomination also has the strong support of Council District 10, and we applaud Council President Herb Wesson for his leadership in recognizing the importance of this cultural landscape. Accordingly, the Conservancy urges the Plum Committee to vote to recommend HCM designation of Beneficial Plaza and Liberty Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith? Yes. Then
Keith Kresge, resident of Koreatown. The Koreatown neighborhood covers about 1/2 of 1% of the 468 square miles that make up the city of Los Angeles. Nonetheless, there are over 20 development projects in the pipeline for the construction of over 8,000 new residential units within that small footprint. As such, Koreatown is taking on a disproportionate share of development as what is widely considered needed housing throughout the entire city. We ask that you consider this gross inequity in your review of each Koreatown project as it comes before you, and that you give substantial weight to the long-term impact of each development on the existing neighborhood. Be aware also that the very expensive Pico Pocket Park that is being offered as a compromise for the potential loss of the open space of Liberty Park will be all of 0.6 acres. This will do little to change the 1/10 of an acre of park space per 1,000 residents for the over 125,000 residents of Koreatown. It would be more prudent to scrap that pricey, ill-advised plan and find a larger parcel to cultivate as park space with the fees generated by the above-mentioned new development. Thank you.
thank you. Nair Park, Dairush Aflatuni, Keith Nakata, Stephen Luffman.
Hello, council members. My name is Nare Park, and I work at API Forward Movement, a nonprofit working for health and environmental equity for API communities and all communities of color. I coordinate a community garden and healthy eating workshop at Menlo Apartments, which is an affordable housing development in Koreatown. Unfortunately, the residents weren't able to be here with me today, but I can tell you that when we are discussing community gatherings and also looking for spaces to have cultural programming, it's really, really difficult to find green space that's available for free. Liberty Park was originally dedicated as a public park on private property, and as we know, the privatization of public spaces contributes negatively to the continued criminalization of poverty of working class and houseless people of color. So in establishing this space as a historic cultural monument and making this green space forever accessible to the public, I hope that you will take a step to help make LA a city for the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Dairush.
Good afternoon. I've been a resident of Koreatown for the past 8 years, and I'm here in support of item number 8 and Annette Van Duren's application, and Save Liberty Park. Liberty Park, it's a park, and it's owned by a developer investor along with the adjacent building, a beautiful building next to it. The park was designed to be open space. It smells like a park. It looks like a park. And I can't believe that we are even putting extra effort to save this park. We live in a very populated part of LA. There are buildings going up everywhere, and we're not really opposing progression and more development. It's just that we have a park. Please save that park for us.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Keith Nakata, Los Angeles. As Mr. Bernstein mentioned earlier, and from the Cultural Heritage Commission report, when Liberty Park opened in 1967, the concept of dedicating private corporate property as community open space was unprecedented. The intent was to promote aesthetic and cultural values of the city, all considered to be, and still considered to be valuable in our current general plan open space element update. All this and the significance of the building designed by Skidmore, Owen, Merrill amount to a project we should be supporting in the city of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Luffman, Denise Derbigny, Ara Ann.
Council members, Steve Luftman. I am not a resident of Koreatown, but I am a resident of Los Angeles, and preserving its great and significant architecture and projects are very important to me. This is a really significant project. It was designed by some of the most significant architects of their era, and in fact, Gordon Bunshaft, truly one of the most important architects of the 20th century. I believe this is his only Los Angeles building. Please preserve this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm here to speak on Liberty Park item number 8. Liberty Park is centrally located and situated in the perfect area. It fits perfectly with the colonnade building across the street and its fountain. So those two together create a wide open area, and it's a beautiful area. It's a place where the many working people of the area can walk over to Starbucks, cross the street, and sit down in the park and get some fresh air in the middle of a workday. It's a place where community members come out and walk their dogs. It's a place where seniors can get a break from being inside their homes, their apartments all day, and meet up with others. While sitting in the park, I have met and talked with many people of diverse backgrounds that I would not have had that opportunity if it were not for the park. Having a place like Liberty Park is essential in promoting a sense of community and understanding among the many diverse groups who live in, work in, and visit Koreatown. Thank you.
Thank you. Caroline Sim, Caitlin Scanlon. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Caroline Sim. I'm here in support of item number 8. I know that the council office members are here and community members are here too, and just wanted to say that Liberty Park was dedicated as a public park on private property in 1967, as someone else said. And up until a few years ago, the owner/developer was kind enough to let the community use the lawn for special events and allowed people to walk on the grass. And up until a few years ago, he started hiring security guards to kick people out of it because I know that he had plans to develop the site. And given that he's not here today, I think that's a sign that we actually might have a shot at protecting this park for future use as it was intended from 1967. And my request is that for folks who have a voice and the power to request of the owner and developer to allow the community to step on that grass again, even though it's just nice to even look at a patch of grass, it would be even more beautiful if we could actually walk on the grass again. And we would be so thankful to the developer.
Thank you. Kevin Tang, Jojo Dulay Brandel, or Jordan Baruchim from CD10. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for taking the time. My name is Caitlin
Scanlon. I've only lived here for a year, and it's a pity this is what's getting me involved in the community, but here I am, and I'm very happy to support designating Liberty Park as a historic monument, or excuse me, historic HCM, yeah, historic cultural monument. My LA, for me, and my community center is this park. It's where I was walking to Ralph's and I met Denise. And I've been going through a really tough time in my life despite having an Ivy League degree in architecture, and so I recognize the value of this place. What made LA home to me was having that interaction and having that public space to create that kind of face-to-face time that we just don't get anymore when we're sucked into our phones or in our cars. And I hope the city understands that preserving places like this can help foster an LA for all. And so I hope that you hear that moral imperative today to create a more democratic and egalitarian and healthy Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Tang. Jojo. Not here. You Jojo?
Hi, my name is Jojo. I'm a resident of Koreatown. I just wanted to implore everyone here today to save Liberty Park because I really do believe, kind of going off what everyone has said already, that public space is a civil right, and without this park, I mean, Koreatown is really lacking a place for discourse and for the community to come together, and I think a development would absolutely go against that. So please, I implore you. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Tang, not here. Jordan Baruchim from Council District 10. Jordan?
Good afternoon, council members, committee members. My name is Jordan Baruchim here from Council President Herb Wesson's office. We're here to ask that you please support the nomination before you and please adopt the recommendation and findings made by the Cultural Heritage Commission. This is scheduled for a placeholder to be in council tomorrow, so we please ask for an aye vote. Thank you very much, and thank you for everyone here who participated in local government. Thank you.
That concludes public comment. Are there any questions or comments from council members, committee members? No? We will take the recommendation of staff and the Council District 10 and approve the nomination and move it to full council. Is there any objections to that motion? Seeing none, so ordered. Thank you. Nomination approved. Thank you. Public comment. General public comment. We have one card. Puppet. Puppet, are you here?
Councilman, on
Yes.
item 1, I don't think you called that item. I don't know if you want to hear from the Director of Planning.
Oh, it's not on my list here today. My staff did not put that on my list. Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead.
We'll go take public comment, then we'll go item to
Okay.
item 1.
Now, remember what I told you. Okay. When you do a good job, we say so. So, yes, I have to admit the criminal Herb Wesson for once did a good thing. He preserved the open space in Liberty Park, giving back to the Korean Americans something special. After all, he's taken millions of dollars in donations and entitlements. He's given us a park where we can go. I can roam freely on the grass again, yes. And then also in Hollywood, you also did a good job in preserving another important building. I'm really surprised. Shocks the fuck out of me. Yes, I'm really surprised at the good job you did. Fuck you for throwing out Herman, though. But overall, I give you an A+. Thank you so much.
Okay, so that concludes public comment. We will go to item 1, a report from the General Manager of the Planning Department.
Good afternoon, Planning Commissioners. Kevin Keller, City Planning. I believe we do not have anything earth-shattering to report at this time. We will save our report for the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're expecting earth-shattering.
Yeah, only earth-shattering next time. Thank you. That concludes our meeting. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.